I got nightmares in my head, I fear. Thoughts build up until I can't hear. My mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper. I got nightmares in my head, I fear. Thoughts build up until I can't hear. That my mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper.
Was here in Stamford today to testify whose blood was possibly found inside Jennifer DULOS' garage and home. Both spots, investigators pulled a lot of evidence. A day of DNA, results from the Connecticut State Forensic Laboratory at the center of Thursday's testimony.
Everyone else was eliminated?
Correct.
A member of the State Forensic Lab team testifying to how they test for DNA and how they establish a profile for Jennifer DULOS through her toothbrush, and other members close to the case, including the kids, Fotis DULOS and Michelle Troconis.
We want to try to include or exclude a possible person as being a contributor to that evidentiary profile.
The forensics lab deals in probability, how likely a DNA profile from evidence matches DNA taken from individuals versus someone else. Jennifer DULOS' DNA was found in multiple suspected bloodstains in the garage, kitchen, Range Rover, and Chevy Suburban.
Is at least 100 billion times more likely to occur if it originated from the source of the DNA profile from a swabbing of the electric toothbrush than if it originated from an unknown individual.
But her DNA was not the only DNA likely present on a doorknob to the garage and the kitchen faucet.
100 billion times more likely to occur if it originated from Fotis DULOS and the source of the DNA profile from the swabbing of the electric toothbrush.
Fotis' DNA likely being on the faucet was of particular interest. According to an arrest warrant and testimony by the family nanny, Fotis was not supposed to be inside the home without court supervision, and Jennifer was strict about that.
She did not want him entering the house at all.
Defense attorney John Schoenhorn isn't disputing the presence of Jennifer's DNA, but is holding the state to their burden to prove a murder occurred involving Fotis, and maintains his client's DNA was nowhere to be found.
There is no place in New Canaan or in that suburban that has Michelle Troconis' DNA.
Based on testimony, Michelle Troconis' DNA was not found anywhere in Jennifer DULOS' garage or home. There were only a few inconclusive results.
Hello, can you hear my dog has already started snoring? So, yeah, that's the bottom line, is that Michelle Troconis' DNA is nowhere there, but it's not the end of the story, because you can have a situation such as you had in the Laurie Vallow case. Laurie doesn't have to be directly involved in the murder of her children, and her DNA doesn't have to be there for it, nevertheless, to implicate her. You have exactly that same thing with Rex Heuermann, where Rex Heuermann's DNA is absent from at least 3 victims, and yet he's implicated. So that is an issue. Thanks very much for that, Tanny. I'll take that as a early birthday present. So we're going to quickly look at a little bit of the testimony today, starting with this sort of mud hole area. Let's have a look.
And Ms. Maydell, just for your benefit, this is referred to in DNA Sup 1, Sup 9, and Sup 8.
Is the volume okay for you guys?
Could you tell the jury what your conclusions were with respect to submission number 2?
Sure. So for the first report that it was reported in is supplemental DNA report, and it is item 2S1 was the swabs from, quote, exterior handles of a mudroom back door. The results are consistent with a DNA profile from item 2S1 being a mixture of 2 contributors, with at least one of them being male. Assuming 2 contributors, given the low likelihood ratios calculated, the results are inconclusive as to whether the source of the DNA profile from the swabbing of the electric toothbrush could be a contributor to the DNA profile from item 2S1.
The interpreter requests that you speak a little bit slower.
Sorry.
Okay. We're going to come back to some of that testimony, but I've already got an idea what the defense's angle is here. And I'm going to refer briefly to at least 3 other cases that provide some insight into their potential strategy. And the 3 cases are Barry Morphew, where they found 2 or 3 unknown DNA samples on the dash of Suzanne Morphew's vehicle. And by the way, a lawyer representing the FBI has just asked for the charges against 2 FBI agents to be dismissed. In that case, just a little bit of an update there. That happened today. Another example where there's unknown DNA, and that is then escalated to the point that must be the killer, is in the Henry van Breda case, where you had an orgy of evidence. You had just incredible amounts of evidence, but wherever there was a unknown, so you might have thousands of DNA profiles that are explicit, and then you might have a dozen or a couple of dozen that are inconclusive. And that then opens the door for the defense to say, that's unknown DNA, which means it's an unknown intruder. Because you can't prove that DNA is from the people who lived there, it must mean it's from someone else. It's from an intruder. And a third example, famous example, is the Ramsey case, where you basically say, let's ignore all of the evidence that we do have and focus on the little unknowns that we not sure about, and then elevate that to the point where we say, that's the killer, this unknown person. And it might even be a composite DNA sample for all we know. That's what they seem to be doing in this case as well. So in other words, what I predict the defense are going to try and do is a combination of saying, we don't know whether Jennifer's not alive. She might be alive for all we know. She may simply have been violently removed from the home and it caused an injury. And there's unknown DNA there. And so it could have been an unknown person who did this, right? Thanks a lot, Robbie. It actually is my 52nd birthday today. Is today Wednesday? Friday. Well, I'm totally out of it. I was born 52 years ago on a Wednesday. We'll talk a little bit about that a little bit later on. But thanks very much. So I think they're going to try and make the case that there's some phantom intruder, and anywhere where you've got a DNA sample that's unclear, well, that could be the intruder. That could be the intruder's DNA, right? Does that make sense? That's a very common strategy, and I don't know whether the the jury are gonna buy that. Let's listen to a little more of the testimony from the expert. Bear in mind, there've been other people talking about blood samples. This is the right person to talk to with regard to who did this DNA belong to. And so far, I don't think there's any surprise here. It looks like Fotis was in the house. Looks like he was in the kitchen. Looks like he could have been in the master bathroom. And I don't think that's a surprise. The 3 takeaways from today's testimony, this is from CT Insider. I think that stands for Connecticut Insider. That's the expert today, Crystal Madel, an analyst with the State Forensic Science Lab. And she gave quite kind of exhausting testimony. So we're going to be paying a bit more attention to what she said. But basically, these are the 3 takeouts. Something happened to Jennifer DULOS in that garage. Do you guys agree with that? Is that a reasonable statement to make? It says here, more than a dozen swabs taken from those had DNA that was 100 billion times to have come from Jennifer's toothbrush than from an unknown individual. The next insight, Fotis Doulos' DNA was likely found in the house. Do you guys agree with that? And what definitely makes this more complicated is all of these are family members, right? So you've got, and to some extent, you have the same DNA conundrum in the Madeleine McCann case, where you've got partial DNA profiles that could be Madeleine, and you're really looking for her Madeleine and proof of her. But because they're partial, it could also be either of her siblings or either of her parents. And then that's the third insight. I don't think that's particularly surprising. Troconis's DNA was not found in the home or the SUV. And I think that's a little bit like saying Laurie Vallow's DNA wasn't found in Chair Day Bell's burial yard. It doesn't really take you anywhere. Although I have to say, Laurie Vallow's a hair, I think that belonged to Laurie Vallow, was found in the duct tape that was wrapped around JJ Vallow. That was definitely pretty damning evidence. And one does wonder, are we going to see similar surprises? Like, one thing that's always interesting when you attend a trial is, especially when you're sitting there, is you realize this has never been reported before in the media. This has never been revealed before by law enforcement. This is big, and it's going to sink the defense. And in the Caitlin Armstrong case, the thing that did that, thanks so much, Sharon, thank you, thanks a lot. The thing that did that in the Caitlin Armstrong case was the DNA on the bicycle that belonged to Caitlin Armstrong. So one wonders, are we going to have some kind of bombshell evidence? That's the title of this video. Why are law enforcement so confident in this charge, conspiracy to commit murder? Is it based on the DNA narrative? Is it based on cell phone evidence? Is it based on CCTV? Or is it based on a combination of all those? That's really what you want to look at. What does Murphy say? Murphy says, yeah, all those paper towels clearly show something big had happened there. Thanks a lot, Mel Stiller. Thank you. Okay, let's play a little bit more from the testimony from today.
Assuming 2 contributors, given the low likelihood ratios calculated, the results are inconclusive as to whether Fotis Doulos could be a contributor to the DNA profile from item 2S1.
And what about the defendant?
Michelle Troconis is eliminated as a contributor to the DNA profile from item 2S1.
And
Could we have a sidebar for a moment, Your Honor?
Yes.
So one thing I want to just say is I find DNA evidence in this sort of setting incredibly arduous, incredibly exhausting, incredibly, it's goes on and on and on. You know, I won't be surprised if basically this expert testified the whole day. I won't be surprised if she testifies for much of, I just want to see if she, for much of tomorrow. She may even testify for a third day. It's incredibly detailed technical data that goes on and on and on. And as a storyteller, what I try to do is, how do you tell a story that involves technical data in a way that is effective? How do you tell a story that needs to be told from the legal perspective in a way that is accessible? And that's an important thing to think about when you're dealing with your readers. And it's an important thing to think about when you're dealing with a jury, and a jury that needs to stay awake. So a couple of things that I would suggest here is that the expert provides either right at the beginning a sort of conclusion, or how can I put it? You could either have providing a summation of the findings, and maybe both sides can agree to that, or you can have a combination of abbreviated findings and then a summation, or you can have every now and then a certain number of items that are discussed with like, let's say, 3 insights that come from that, so that you are providing in easy accessible English just a clear idea of what has been discovered, right? Otherwise, it's just blah 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 that goes on for 3 days, and eventually the jury are relieved. It's like, wow, I'm so glad that's over, right? And even journalists might feel that way as well. Something else that I think's not done enough with technical evidence, DNA evidence, is why don't you show the computer charts, the statistical charts showing graphs and the data? Show that on screens instead of having a person tell you it's so many billion, whatever. Show a pie chart of the one scenario compared to the other. Show it in pictures rather than one person just going like that the whole time. Does that make sense? Otherwise, it's potentially a lot of dead time, and your jury's attention span's very precious. You don't want to waste it.
Displaying for the court now, States Exhibit 9, folder number 2, pictures.
So this is referring to,
Assuming 2 contributors, given the low likelihood ratios calculated, the results are inconclusive as to whether Petros Doulos, Konstantin Doulos, Christiane Doulos, C. Noel Doulos, or Theodore Doulos could be contributors to the DNA profile from 66S1. Lauren Almeida and Pavel Gumini are eliminated as contributors to the profile from 66S1.
so you may have heard there that she's referring to Pavel Gumini. She's also cutting off a potential defense contention that maybe Pavel is the perpetrator here. That of course his vehicle was driving around with important evidence in it. The vehicle was washed as well, and so he's a logical patsy in a way for this case. And then you can say, well, they may not have found his DNA at the scene, but he could have been wearing gloves, and all of these unknown profiles, well, that could be him. It could be a partial profile from him. And what the state are basically doing is they're trying to eliminate that little rabbit hole even before the defense can kind of get a bite at it, if that makes sense. Okay, let's listen to a little bit more. The audio from the court today is lower than it was yesterday.
This was identified as a fragment of a paper towel with a blood-like stain and subsequently submitted to the Division of Scientific Services and designated as item submission number 67. And there were actually 2 separate analysis of this particular item. There was a fragment of the paper towel, and then there was a swabbing of the paper towel. Is that correct?
Yes, 67S1 and 67S2.
Okay, so let's start with 67S1, which was actually a fragment of the paper towel. What were the results for that?
The results are consistent with the DNA profile from item 67S1 originating from a single female individual. Assuming one individual, the DNA profile from 67S1 is at least 1 billion times more likely to occur if it originated from the source of the DNA profile from the swabbing of the electric toothbrush than if it originated from an unknown individual. Fotis Doulos and Michelle Troconis are eliminated as the source of 67S1.
And directing your attention now to supplemental report number 9, the DULOS children, as well as Lauren Almeida and Pavel Gloomy, were also eliminated. Is that correct?
Correct.
So in terms of your votes, please vote if you haven't already. In terms of the poll, see there are 125 votes. 33% are saying that you think law enforcement are connecting Michelle Troconis via texts. Just slightly more than that, 35% at the moment say CCTV, and I do think that is indisputable. Michelle Troconis, we know, was in the vehicle with Fotis Doulos on the night of the murder when he was disposing of garbage bags. We see her sticking her arm out the window and out the open door and sort of seems to be cleaning it or dragging her fingers on the surface of the sidewalk. One can only speculate what that involved, but I wouldn't be surprised if she got something on her fingers. I think she said chewing gum, but it could be some other kind of inculpatory evidence. It could have been she may have gotten blood on her fingers from handling something and then wiped it off on the sidewalk, because you can't wipe it off on her shirt, on her pants, on the upholstery of the vehicle, on any kind of tissue inside the vehicle. She's trying to just get it off her body. Doesn't it make sense that that is what may have happened there? So the CCTV is certainly already what we know about. What we don't know about is there could be texts that very unambiguously, very directly deal with certain things. And that's quite a make or break thing. They either those texts exist or they don't. Either there are emails, browser histories, search items, who knows, or they're not. So I guess we'll have to find out. DNA, I think, is at the moment certainly not very likely. I don't think Michelle Troconis's DNA is anywhere in this crime scene. The issue is, could it be in any of the other vehicles? We'll see. But I don't think DNA is going to make the case for Michelle Troconis or otherwise. Okay, so shall we listen to a little bit more? Hey, stop snoring.
And what were the results of 67S2, which was a swabbing of this paper towel fragment?
No DNA profile was detected.
So someone made this comment. I'm curious to know what happened to his other phone. Anyone know the answer to that question? Anyone know the answer to what happened to his other phone? Let's see how well you guys know this case so far. Zircon says cops. Can you elaborate? Maria says the police took it. Dee said, did the police take it? As far as I know, he was interviewed by the police and then they took it without a warrant. That's how I understand it. In other words, when they realized she was missing and they realized there was some blood and they spoke to him, that's when they took his phone. So it's not that he hid his phone away. They got his phone before he could, very early on. And I must say the fact that they got his phone so early on may be very important to this case, because it may mean he didn't have time. If he committed the murder in the morning and that afternoon or evening he was disposing of like 27 garbage bags, whatever it is, then you can almost imagine he didn't have all the time in the world to clear his phone. And so there might be images on there, there might be text on there, there might be searches done on his phone, who knows? I'm not sure. That's an interesting question. The fact that he handed his phone over is, I think, legally important. The other thing is he's no longer alive, and if he was alive, he could be making legal comments about that, but he's not alive. So I don't think that's of much legal merit. Did they get his second phone? Good to see you, Matt. I'm not sure. Not sure.
If we can call up state police. Actually, I don't believe we have a photograph of 46, but state police 46 is identified as 2 swabs of a blood-like stain KM positive seized from the scene North Bay, subsequently submitted to the Division of Scientific Services and designated as submission 110.
So the garbage bags, I think, came from a box inside the in the house, as far as I am aware. I don't think he brought the garbage bags with him. If we look at just some of the news stories today, just getting a summary. Forensic expert discusses DNA evidence. Complicated DNA evidence dominates the testimony in Michelle Troconis' trial Thursday. And after, hours and hours of this testimony, there are like 3 takeaways. Jennifer DULOS was likely attacked in the garage. That's kind of what we've been saying all along, but it is important to get proof of that. Fotis Dulos' DNA is in the house. We kind of knew that anyway, but now there's proof of that. And Michelle Troconis' DNA isn't in the house. We kind of knew that as well. So out of the 3 things that we found out today, we kind of knew all of those all along. It's not, none of that is a surprise, right? None of it's really a surprise. Okay, so I'm going to take you guys through the potential motive. We're going to talk about that at some length. And instead of just saying, I wonder whether she had a motive, and sort of thinking about it in a very casual way, we're going to try and think about it in a systematic way. So I think the first thing to talk about is the Chris Watts case. There's a mistress there, and many people believe that that mistress was involved in the murder. I don't. And there'll be people who will swear up and down that she had to have been involved. She obviously is involved in kind of fucking up his thinking process. She addled his mind, right? But she's not involved in the sense that she sat down and said, let's get rid of your wife, blah, blah, blah. And a really good way of thinking about the Watts case is via a case that happened literally a couple of months later, just say August, September, October, November. About 3 months later, it was the Patrick Frazee case. And in that case, the mistress came forward and testified how she helped the perpetrator, Patrick Frazee, right? Let me let me be absolutely explicit. In the Patrick Frazee case, Patrick Frazee killed his fiancée on Thanksgiving in 2018 in a horrific thing where he hit her with a baseball bat. He created this huge bloodbath in her living room in Woodland Park. Then he left and he had his mistress come to the scene and clean everything up. And she filled up like about 5 or 6 garbage bags, but she cleaned up so well that even the cadaver dogs couldn't find anything except when she put those garbage bags outside and leaned them against a truck. The cadaver dogs alerted onto the bumper of that truck. But it was a mystery to the police. They couldn't understand what had happened to this woman until the mistress came forward and she explained in detail what she cleaned up, where, how. They tore up the floorboards, found almost no blood as well. They did find signs of cleaning, just as we do in this case. She told them how they took this poor woman's body in a black plastic tote and made a huge bonfire and burnt everything, and all that remained was a tiny fragment of a tooth. But what this mistress did was she provided a narrative that made a lot of sense about what had happened. And if you compare the mistress in the Patrick Frazee case to the mistress in the Chris Watts case, what's the main difference? Well, one of the main differences is that there was talk of marriage, that Crystal Kenny was possibly going to marry Patrick Frazee. He'd given her a dog. They'd known one another for years, right? So time, and I say this so often, the answer is time. And so if you want to look at potential involvement of a mistress, you want to look at length of time. And equally, if you want to look at how a mistress may not be involved, it's time as well. Was 5 or 6 weeks enough time for Nicole Kessinger to fall head over heels in love that she would do anything for Chris Watts? No. Was it enough time for Chris Watts to do whatever he did? Well, he'd spent a lot more time with his wife and with his family and in his situation than Kessinger had, right? But in any event, the one of the keys to unlocking the involvement of a mistress is time. And you have the exact same thing in the Laurie Vallow case. How long had she known Chad Daybell? If she'd only known him 1 month, would she really have felt driven, the incentive to annihilate her family? I must say the Laurie Vallow case is literally like a female version of the Chris Watts case. And that's why it's astonishing that it hasn't been appreciated as a major crime by the true crime community. I just saw a special from Core TV saying, the 10 most infamous defendants. I think that was the thing, 10 most shocking testimonies of defendants. And Laurie Vallow was at number 9, I think, and Alex Murdaugh number 10. She was at number 2, and Alex Murdaugh at number 1. Okay, so let's. I think Maria wants some attention. Let's give Maria some attention. So, what do you think is more likely? That you meet somebody tomorrow, Maria? Let's say you meet somebody tomorrow, and that they really make an impression on you, and they convince you to go away with them for a weekend based on maybe knowing them for an hour. Would you do that? So let's try and make it a statistical thing, but with yourself. Tomorrow you meet a completely new person, and they say, let's go to Cancun on a little holiday. And maybe you've only known them for 10 minutes or 1 minute. Would you be likely to go along with them? You personally, would you be likely to go along with them? How about if you've known someone for quite a long time, and they say, let's say the long time is 6 months, and they say, oh, by the way, I've got these tickets. Would you like to go with me to Cancun? Would you be more likely to go with them the shorter you've known them or the longer you've known them? In other words, would you be more committed to doing something that involves an investment of your time, energy, and other things, or not? It's quite a simple question. And she says, oh, I think everyone's different. Okay, so should we not talk about that? Should we say time is totally irrelevant? Time's totally irrelevant to this. Should we say that? Someone who's in a relationship who may have committed murder, it doesn't really matter if they've been in it for 1 day or much longer. It doesn't really matter. Any thoughts? Any thoughts? I must say, I always find it quite strange when you make a apparently obvious point and then people don't agree on it. So committing murder, so when you decide to conspire to commit murder with someone, it's almost like getting married. You're going to spend the rest of your life keeping that person's secrets. You're going to spend the rest of your life living with this reality. It's not a thing like going for a Starbucks coffee. It's a major life thing. And it's quite interesting that somebody would say, wow, I could do that after knowing someone for 10 minutes. It's got nothing to do with time. It's got nothing to do with commitment. It's quite interesting that somebody would say that. I think what I'm trying to say is, without making it sound like it's my opinion, because I'm sure what's going on here is that's just your opinion, right? What I'm trying to say here is one case, the Chris Watts case, where the perpetrator wasn't in a relationship for very long, and the person that committed the crime and the mistress broke up like that almost instantly, whereas Michelle Troconis stayed in a relationship with Fotis DULOS, and she was also in the relationship with him much longer as well, right? Also, Michelle Troconis was working with him, right, in the same kind of building, and she lived with him and all of those things. And all of that only happens over time. You only invite someone to come and live with you and their child when you've known them for a certain amount of time. And the analogy I'm trying to make is, in the Chris Watts case, there wasn't really that much time. And in the Patrick Frazee case, and I've written books about both cases, there was a heck of a lot more time that went by, years, right? And there were things like marriage proposals and a lot of other things. So that's really just a point I'm trying to make. It's quite a simple point. If you don't want to, take that, then I suppose then you can say, let's not talk about how long Michelle Troconis was in a relationship with Fotis. It's irrelevant. That's the conversation I'm trying to get to. Let's not talk about how long she was having an affair with him. And what is an affair? Cheating, lying, manipulating, deceiving right? That's all of those things which are the same things you do in a crime. You lie, you manipulate, you distort information. And you have the same thing with the Scott Peterson case. How long was this lying, cheating, manipulation, deception going on in terms of the affair before you had the same thing going on in terms of the murder? Inconsistent statements and so on. Let's not have that conversation because everybody's different. Oh, okay, let's not have that conversation. So another example of that, which is there's a period of uncertainty, let's call it that. You have in the Caitlin Armstrong case, where how long was she aware of somebody else that is threatening her fairy tale? And then you can say, well, time really doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter how long that is going on. It probably did matter to her. It may not matter to you, but it probably did matter to her. Okay, so I'm going to try not to read the comments too much here, and we're going to go through 8 aspects to the motive question. We're going to go through 8 aspects, and the first one is ambition, or let's say ambitious. Have I spelled it right? I didn't spell it right, sorry. Maria, I think you might want to correct my spelling there. I don't think I spelled it right. I'm quite surprised you didn't do that. Okay, anyway, so let me ask just like a simple question. Do you think Michelle Troconis is ambitious? Just a simple question. Do you think she's ambitious? And you really want to not just speculate on that. You want to ask the question in terms of what we know. And did you know that she's got a degree in psychology, just like the housekeeper? She's got a degree in psychology. She also worked in public relations. What's public relations all about? You might also want to call it public manipulation. Did you know that one of her goals was to rank in the top 50 female water skiers? One of her goals was to rank in the top 50 female water skiers in the world. Would you say that's ambitious? I would say, if you want to be in the top 50 in the world in anything, you're being quite ambitious. It's not just that you want to compete at a high level, you want to be one of the best in the world. We know that she was competitive, and we can see how she was attracted to Fotis because he was so competitive. And she would interview snow skiers, top snow skiers, for ESPN. So she was obviously interested in high achieving sports people. And it's not surprising that she would be one herself if she's kind of interested in that. But it does raise the question, if you want to be one of the top female water skiers in the world, who's going to pay for that? Who's going to pay for the boat, the coaching, the fuel for the boat, the mooring of the boat, the traveling to all of these events? And I can tell you, as someone who previously took part in triathlon at quite a high level, you don't need a boat, but you need a bicycle and specialized rims and specialized equipment and a wetsuit and running shoes. It's almost like you need the equipment of one sport times 3, and then you've got to travel with all that to one hotel and another and so on. And I've competed all over the world in triathlon, Australia, South Korea, the UK, all over South Africa. I wouldn't mind competing in America, but the point is, who's going to pay for this? If you're no longer working for ESPN, who's going to be paying for it? Is her job as whatever she was doing for construction, right? I would imagine it's something like doing their social media. Is that going to pay for going to Miami and competing in a water skiing thing? I would imagine not. So the question again is, I don't think it's a question of is she ambitious, but just how ambitious is she, right? And think about ambition and motive as possibly going together. Think about how ambitious was Chris Watts in wanting to hold on to a house and hold on to his girlfriend, and how ambitious was he during the Sermon on the Porch, that he just thought he could make his family disappear. So that's kind of one question. The next one is invested. How invested was she? And again, you might say, I really don't understand why you would use a word like ambitious. Well, think about Laurie Vallow. How ambitious was she when she thought she's going to be kind of a divine figure, one of God's most important people on earth? She was pretty ambitious in what she wanted to do. So if we talk about invested, think about the DULOS deal. The whole deal that she has with DULOS is that he wants Draconis to move in with her and her daughter. That was something he once said to Jennifer. He said, "Why don't we all just live together in this big house? There's enough space. I've fallen out of love with you, but I'd still like Michelle to come and stay with us and her daughter," right? And so instead of Jennifer saying, "Oh, that's a great idea. I've paid for this and I've paid for that. Let's just let the whole thing continue." So what happens? Jennifer moves out and Michelle moves in. But it doesn't really solve the problem. Jennifer moving out doesn't really solve the original problem, because the original problem is he's $7 million in debt, and he needs to get his paws on her father's money. And of course, if Jennifer's moved out, her father's less happy with him, right? And if Michelle Draconis is ambitious and invested, and her ambitions and investments depend on, to some extent, on being in a relationship with Fotis, who's been paying for things, but Fotis has been getting his money from somewhere else, then the original problem remains, and that problem is Jennifer. How do we get Jennifer's money now that Jennifer doesn't want to give her money anymore, right? And the other thing is Michelle lives with Fotis. So if he gets kicked out of that house, she gets kicked out of the house. And so just in terms of the words ambitious and invested, how much do you think Michelle wants to live in that huge mansion? A little bit, a lot, or like just an unfathomable amount of wanting to? What do you think? I think it's important to look at a picture of what we're talking about. We're talking about this property, right? We're talking about this property. Would you like to live there? if someone said, okay, you can continue living where you're living right now, or you can live in this house, where would you prefer to stay? Would you like to live in a 1.75 million house or not? Would it really not matter to you? Does where you live matter? Does your home matter to you or not really? It matters to most people. It really does matter to most people. Let's have a look at some video of this home.
Welcome to my school. It's Neo. Confused? Don't be. It's school exactly as you know it. Just from the
Well, guys, here's what we know. That home at 4 Jefferson Crossing is right now in foreclosure. Now, the family and friends of Fotis Doulos are currently staying there as they get his final arrangements in order. That includes his sister, Rena, and apparently Fotis's best friend, Anna Curry. And in a new motion that was just filed by the estate of Hilliard Farber moments ago, which we obtained, they basically say they're okay with the friends and family staying there as long as they get out by Friday, take care of the place, and return the key. Another day of firsts in the Fotis Doulos saga. Our first look inside the garage where he tried to end his life. And our first look at Anna Curry, Fotis's best friend, who spent more than $100,000 to keep him free on bond. Allegedly spotted at the house by conservator Rob Giuffria on Saturday.
Knocked on the door with the Farmington police, and the occupants were reluctant to come out. When they finally did come out, I met with Anna Curry. I asked them when can you be out of the house, being sensitive to the fact that they're grieving and they lost a loved one. And the response I got was by the end of the week, they thought they could be out.
Giuffria snapped pictures of the SUV, the doors first responders breached to get to Fotis, a BMW sedan, and 2 door locks that will need to be changed once the house is secured. In response to the release of the photos, Norm Pattis said, quote, "This adds a level of scum to the case that is difficult to fathom. Who will ultimately be in charge of the property is up for..."
So another way of asking this question, and it's important sometimes to make it personal, is how would you feel if someone asked you to leave your home right now? For whatever reason, you need to just leave your home. How would you feel about it? In other words, are you very invested in the home that you live in? Most of us are. Most of us have spent some time, money, effort in making wherever we live a home, right? And so you would also spend a little bit of time, effort, and money defending your right, I suppose you could say, your right to continue living in your home, right? But I think it's a very important thing, the fact that Michelle Troconis was living in this house when this crime committed, just as Caitlin Armstrong was living in Colin Strickland's house, or they were sharing the same house when that crime happened. It's like, I don't want to lose my home. I don't want to lose this situation I'm in, right? Why? Because I'm invested. This is what I want. This is where I want to be, right? Most of us would feel that way. I'm sure maybe, is there someone here who says, I wouldn't mind being kicked out of my house? Maria, what do you say? Is Maria still here? Maria, would you like to leave your home? And another way of asking that question, which goes back to what I said earlier, if you've been living in your home for a week and you've been living in your home for 70 years or 20 years, would that make a difference or not really? It's just a house. It doesn't really matter. Thanks so much, Julia. I appreciate it. Thanks a lot. And in a way, you could, what is, there we go. Thanks, Sally. That's also a good point. Catherine says, I'd say she's all in. I mean, I could in a way stop right here, and I think I've made my case where you can say, just the fact that you're living in this house and your partner is doing X, Y, Z, it would be very difficult not to be very closely involved with that person and invested, right? And what is quite interesting is when shortly after Jennifer DULOS went missing, Fotis basically got another girlfriend. He wasn't very invested in many of the women that he was involved in. He seemed to be more invested in himself, didn't he? The other thing is Jennifer was terrified. She was so terrified of Fotis that she fled with the kids under the cover of night. And DULOS then called 911. He reported the kids missing and he accused his wife of stealing property. So Fotis is also pretty invested in the whatever outcome he wants, right? But the bottom line with this whole thing about being invested is isn't his fate her fate? If you're living with someone and it's not your home, isn't your fate really attached to the fate of the person that you're with? Do you follow? And if you're just joining us, what we're talking about here is the potential motive from Michelle Troconis's side. Obviously, there's been a lot of testimony about DNA. We're going a little bit beyond that. Our discussion is kind of venturing a little bit beyond that specific aspect. So we've got another contrarian here. Robin says, a house doesn't make a home. Robin, are you saying if you lived in this house, you wouldn't be
For debate,
mind if you had
Jafria
to
is the
leave?
choice of the
Is that what
Farbers,
you're saying?
but the DULOS defense team wants Stefan Reich of Pinnacle Real Estate Group to be the conservator. The defense claims Jafria can't be impartial, in part because he has testified against Mr. DULOS in past civil proceedings.
In my opinion, his testimony was not truthful. And in my opinion, he was adverse to Mr. DULOS in those particular cases. I think a receivership should be conducted by a party that is impartial.
The defense motion claims Jafria owes Mr. DULOS money.
We actually had a little bit of we call a little bit of fireworks before a deposition one day. And he was looking for a way to employ her when she was living in the house. And he asked that I pay her $3,000 in order to help with the marketing of Fort Jefferson and other properties.
And all day long, we have seen.
Let's have a look at some of your comments. We all need housing. Okay. Gloria played the mortgage. Yeah. Okay. Right. So we've looked at two aspects so far in terms of motive. How ambitious is the mistress? I would say more than most. Someone who wants to be top 50 female water skier. Think about the idea of ambition in the Mo Wilson case. How ambitious was Mo? How ambitious was Colin Strickland? And I think what a lot of people underestimated was how ambitious was Caitlin Armstrong. Anyway, the second thing is invested. How invested was the mistress in this story? And obviously, if you live with someone, you're pretty invested. What did I write here? Troconis versus Jennifer. So in terms of in terms of what is almost the subtext to all of this, you can imagine that how Troconis felt about this was it's me versus her, right? I'm the mistress. This is his actual wife. You can imagine that's the same way Nicole Kessinger felt about Shanann. You can imagine that's the same way Crystal Kenny felt about Kelsey Bereth. You can imagine that's how Caitlin Armstrong felt about Mo Wilson. It's me versus you, and let's do a comparison. Who's younger? Who's more? Who's in this case? Who's sportier? Also in the Caitlin Armstrong case, who's sportier? Who is sexier? Who is so kind of in terms of that. And I'm certainly not saying these are my the qualities I'm looking for. I'm saying this is how you can imagine the mistress is comparing themselves to the opposition, which is the wife, right? I don't think it's rocket science what I'm saying. On the other hand, I think so Troconis could, in theory, compare herself favorably to, and I'm assuming, to Jennifer Doulos, thinking, well, I'm younger than, why does Fotis prefer me to her? Well, I'm younger, I'm sportier, I'm sexier, I do things with him that he likes, like water skiing, right? On the other hand, the things that aren't terribly good about that situation is she's poorer. She's a lot poorer than Jennifer is. She can't speak English very well. I don't know whether she's got a work permit. And also she's his colleague. And what did I say about employees? Oh, that's in terms of commitment. Okay, commitment. So she's also aware that in certain areas she's at a disadvantage, where without Jennifer in the picture, there are going to possibly be financial issues, which she can help change the outcome possibly. And then the fact that she can't speak English so well has to do with what are her prospects in America if she suddenly doesn't have a place to stay, if she loses her job, all of those things, kind of what's going to happen. Is it going to be a soft landing or a hard landing, right? We're using all of these to probe a potential motive. And that brings us to the third aspect, commitment. Yeah, she could speak English, but she doesn't speak English very well. And if you have paid attention, she's actually got earphones in during the trial because she's having the actual court testimony translated, right? So we kind of dealt with this in the Chris Watts case, where it's like, I cannot believe you're comparing Nicole Kessinger to Shanann Watts. Like, how can you even do that? And the thing that I think you're missing is that is what Chris Watts did. That is what Fotis Doulos did, right? And you might not like it verbalized, but that is literally what happened in this case. Someone drew a comparison and whatever. And that is the kind of subtext to going through that. It may not be pretty, but it certainly is what's going on. Now, in terms of commitment, she not only lives with him, she lives with him with her own daughter. That raises the commitment level significantly. She not only lives with him with her daughter, she also works for him. That raises the commitment considerably. And besides that, she also water skis with him and does those sort of things with him as well, where Jennifer didn't do that, right? And someone was saying earlier, I don't see how time has got anything to do with this. Well, if you don't have a lot of time, you can't, there's not enough time to offer someone a job and start working in a job and get kind of caught up in all of those things. It takes time to get into kind of like a bind where you totally caught up in something, right? It takes time to get invested, to put a lot of yourself on the line. And so also in terms of commitment, there's a 2018 photo where it shows, I wonder if I can find that photo, but it's a photo where,
outside ride.
sorry about that. It's a 2018 photo where Michelle Troconis is shown celebrating with an award from that Builders Association with Photos DULOS. And that shows to some extent her commitment, that she's part of the business. Let's put it that way. Let's see if I can find that photo. Troconis DULOS Award Building Association. Troconis. And that is this image. Are there more? It's funny, that's not really the image I was thinking about, but there it is. It's this image right over here. Is it gonna, that image, right? And when you look at that and you know that she's living with him, that speaks to you of commitment. Also, if you're winning awards and things like that, doesn't it show ambition and investment? If you train for something, you've got to be invested in it, right? You've got to also be ambitious. It takes time to work and then deliver, right? And that is why it is such an important question to ask. I know some people can't see why it is, but how long had they been having their affair? Right? How long had they been having their affair? And we got a little bit of insight into that from the nanny who said, Lauren Almeida said that they met in Miami in March 2017. And at that stage, the kids were already referring to Michelle as Mishi, right? And that gives you an idea. They must have known each other a couple of months longer than that as well. And the longer they know each other, the likelihood, sorry if this is surprising to some people, but the longer they know each other, the stronger the likelihood of a stronger commitment, a stronger investment, more more investment and engagement in the partnership, and thus she would be more familiar with everything that is going on, right? Let's just do that. Okay. And that then brings us to the next issue, which is house. And not to be silly about this, but this really isn't a small little house to be quibbling about. This is an enormous house. It's one of the biggest houses I've ever seen in true crime. It's much bigger than the Spreckles mansion in Coronado. It's bigger than OJ's home in Brentwood. I'm trying to think of a house that's bigger than this one that we've ever dealt with in true crime. It's way bigger than the house in Moselle. It's possibly the biggest house we've ever dealt with in a high-profile case. I think it's bigger than the Ramsey home. Well, I'm pretty sure this is bigger than the Ramsey home. Do you doubt that? And you might say, I don't care about a big house, but I think there's some people who do. When I was in Myrtle Beach, I spent my last 2 days or so in America in Myrtle Beach, and I stayed in a pretty big house, and it was those two things. It was pretty and it was big, and I thought, wow, this is like a dream house. I wouldn't mind living here. And if it had been a lot smaller, I probably wouldn't have felt that way. If it was similar to the boxy hotel rooms I'd stayed in, like one room, one bedroom kind of place, I don't know if I would have been particularly fond of it, but it was a beautiful house, and it was a big house. And the bigger the house, the more you can do with it. You can have an office in one room, and you can have a guest stay in another room, and you can have that as your YouTube studio, and you can have that as a little bit of a cinema in your home or whatever it is. You can do more with a bigger home, right? So you might feel like, some people might feel like that's quite a lot to lose. If you're already living there, you might feel like that's quite a lot to lose. And in terms of Fotis, he probably didn't want to lose that house either. The house was built by Fotis, and it was co-owned by Jennifer using her father's money. Now you can imagine, do you think Fotis wants to hang on to this house? He built the house. Do you think he wants to hang on to it? And I think you could use those same terms. How ambitious was the person who built this house? How much did the person who invested in the house and then stayed in the house, how much was he invested? How much commitment was there in terms of that as well? And what's the other thing? What did I say? His fate is her fate. So you can imagine if Fotis really doesn't want to lose this house, how does Michelle feel? How does Michelle feel? And that then brings us to, was there any pressure? We're coming to the end, so I think there are eight of these aspects that tie potentially into motive. Ambition, how invested was she? How committed was she in various respects? What impact did the house have in all of these things? Well, it's not a small house, it's a massive house. And then number 5, what driving factors may there have been in pressure to, for example, lie? Like what could have pressured Michelle into lying about certain things? Well, if you think about the fact that Fotis was even pressuring his own children to lie, do you know about that? When they was trying to sort out the custody aspect, how did it happen again? Fotis was given visitation and I think custody rights, but not if his mistress was present. And so he ignored that, and he simply told them to lie about it, his own children. And so if Fotis could pressure his own kids into lying about something that he was doing wrong, could he not pressure his companion, his girlfriend, to do the same thing, put pressure on her to not be honest, to provide him with an alibi, for example. And that's exactly what she did. She provides him with an alibi. She says that they took a shower together. I think that they had sex. She does it a second time, and then the third time she says, no, that's not true. Okay, and then number 6 is salary. How would you feel if you had a job and you lived with your boss, and your boss wanted to, let's say, a fairly small crime. Let's say your boss wanted to steal a Starbucks coffee, right? And your boss insisted that you do it, right? If you worked at McDonald's, you might say, F this, I'm not interested. But if you lived with your boss, if your child lived with your boss, and if your boss was paying your salary and you lived in this wonderful big mansion, it might be a little bit harder to say, okay, no, I'm not going to do what you're asking me to do. Also, if you stealing that Starbucks is going to partially, by the way, I'm not trying to encourage anyone to do anything dishonest, just using it as an analogy. But what I'm trying to say is if doing that smallish thing could help your partner hold on to their house, and you live there as well, would you be more incentivized to do it? So the salary kind of provides, and other things, provides incentive. So it's not just a simple thing of, did she want to do what she possibly did? Right? And I think that is an important question. Would she have wanted to do this? Was it would she have benefited from Jennifer's death? I think that's a important question to ask as well. The other side of it is, in the same way that Jennifer was terrified of photos, couldn't Michelle sometimes be terrified? Aside from certain things she may have wanted to do, there may have been certain things she didn't want to do, but she was under his control because she was living with him. And he may have been a tyrannical individual to live under. That's the one side of things. Here's the other side. And it kind of has to do with greed and narcissism, although I don't like that second term. I don't really like using it. If you look at images of Michelle Troconis, she comes across as quite a glamorous figure. She's very caught up in the snow skiing culture. She snow skis herself. She what else does she do? She comes across as quite a glamorous person herself. She's attractive. She mixes with the rich and famous. She mixes with top sports people, and you get a sense that she's attracted by a glamorous, larger-than-life lifestyle. And who isn't? Who isn't attracted to something like that? And so, on the one hand, she has that with ESPN, where ESPN allows her to live a life of. She participated in a program called Snow Time, which allowed her to interview World Cup athletes, directors of ski resorts, celebrities that were on vacation. And so she was having this incredible life before she met Fotis. But the point is, it's a glamorous life. And so when she kind of hitches her wagon to Fotis, doesn't she feel entitled to that same thing, a glamorous life? Doesn't she feel she expects and wants and feels entitled to the continuation of the glamorous life that she's had all along? And I think before we get to the last one, number 8, I want to try and show you some photos, because it's one thing to say glamorous life, it's another thing to see it. I hope I can find these images before too long. Not sure where exactly they are. Just give me a second. I thought I may have emailed it to myself under motive. I email myself so many emails with important stories. Anyway, you guys just chat amongst yourselves for a second. Let's put that, where's that thing? Let's put this on for a second. Oh, that's not even giving me a break. Yeah, I think this might be it. Here it is. Sorry about that. Okay, you really let me down. Okay, so I'm gonna show you guys a couple of pictures. I have to say, you know, in the movie The Matrix, Morpheus says to Neo at one point, unfortunately, no one can be told what the Matrix is. You have to see it for yourself. Well, the same applies in true crime. You can't really be told things like it was glamorous, it was exciting. Compared to what? Compared to who? Glamorous in what way? And so you've really got to see it to really get a sense of what we're talking about. And there's a little bit of a clue, for example, in that building. It gives you an idea of the scale of things we're talking about. Well, we get another clue in, for example, this image, right? That is a peek into Jennifer's life. Jennifer's life is her daughter. Jennifer's life is an active lifestyle on the slopes, right? You're already getting a sense of Michelle. You're getting a sense of Michelle that you didn't have before. Yeah, and I mean, Michelle was living this, and she wants to continue living it, and that's one of the most difficult things of all. Is once you have a certain kind of lifestyle, it's very hard to let go of it. And so this is a much younger Michelle than that one, I think. But don't forget, a big part of her life is her daughter. She's also got dreams for her daughter. She's also invested in terms of her daughter. Her daughter also has a home that she doesn't want to lose. And I don't know if you guys know, it came up in the testimony somewhere that one of the DULOS children was considered Michelle's daughter as his girlfriend. So that also creates a sense of, to some extent, commitment, right? Compared to, let's say, if her child didn't like the DULOS children or vice versa, well, then you would have a situation like that would have less commitment, right? Let me put it into doggy terms. When I walk my dog, sometimes they're dog walkers whose dogs like my dog, and then I kind of become friends with them. Equally, there are people who I might want to talk to, but their dogs don't like my dog, and so I don't end up really talking to them, right? It's a lot like that. In the Ramsey case, the kids who were friends with other kids, the parents become friends with. In the same thing in the McCann case, the families go on holiday with people who are friends with one another in terms of children being friends with one another and also parents being friends with one another. If a child doesn't like another child, it can create a lack of commitment in a mixed family situation. So I've already shown you that picture. When you see Michelle Troconis in court, she looks quite plain, but that's done on purpose. She's trying to look understated, but she's someone who is an ESPN presenter. She's capable of looking quite glamorous, as you can see in this image here on the right. When you look at that picture, doesn't it remind you a little bit of Caitlin Armstrong? This is someone who expects quite a lot out of life. She wants a lot out of life. She expects a lot out of life. She's a highly motivated, energized figure, right? She's not someone who wants to sit in an attic and write. She wants to be out there and live large. But anyone who does that, someone's got to pay for that. You know, if you want to live in ski resorts and go water skiing around the world, somebody's got to pay for that. So when we talk about glamorous, you can see that's quite a glamorous lifestyle. When last did you have a photo of yourself in that sort of pose, in that sort of place? And so we're talking about glamour on quite a large scale, right? Going skiing at expensive destinations like Aspen every winter. I would like to do something like that, but I've skied in Austria once, and I've gone on a couple of other skiing holidays, and they are quite expensive. Her sister sold shoe products. I'm not sure if that's one of them, but that is what her sister did for a living. It's not quite on the scale of, I mean, if you sold that sort of thing, do you think you could afford to live in a house like that? That's her sister. Another expensive thing that she does for a living is, well, there she's playing polo, but horse riding and horse therapy. Okay, that's nice, but who's going to pay for it? It's hard maintaining a horse. You've got to pay for their food. They need a room to be sheltered in. My sister has a horse, and my father pays for the upkeep of the horse, and it's not cheap. Horses don't eat a small salad every day. They eat quite a lot. Horses have got to be exercised, groomed, maintained. It's expensive. Who's going to pay for that? Jennifer. Is Jennifer going to be paying for that? So are you getting a better sense of who Michelle Troconis is? Well, if you haven't, you should really read this article, Michelle Troconis, 5 Facts You Need to Know. And I kind of got a lot of the information I needed for this presentation from this article. So do read it if you haven't already. But just to quickly review what the article says, basically says Michelle Troconis is described in the divorce case as being a paramour of Fotis Doulos, and her interaction with his children was a contention throughout the custody battle. So one of Jennifer's biggest problems with Michelle was that Michelle was present with her own kids. And talk about someone being invested and interfering in the middle of a very important period for a family. She's worked with Fotis at his home builder company. There she is with the award. She's a native of Venezuela. She went to college in Venezuela. She's also divorced. And that is something that I think I've, to some extent, underestimated here. Where is that? Is if she's previously divorced, she probably knows what is on the conveyor belt. She probably knows it's expensive, it takes a long time, you can lose your home. Maybe she lost her home. You are set to lose a lot in a divorce. And he'd been divorced previously as well. Shanann Watts had been divorced previously as well. Anyone who's been divorced knows you probably don't want to get divorced if you can avoid it. If you are going to go down that route, it's going to be painful, expensive. It's going to cost you a lot, not just in terms of money. And do you think Michelle would have maybe wanted to make life easier for herself and Fotis, given how invested she was, how invested they both were? In other words, do you think she could have benefited from, let's say, an easy divorce? Let's just be absolutely frank about that. Can a mistress benefit from a situation where she's involved with a married person and then suddenly that person disappears, dies, or gets like an instant divorce and then the coast is clear? Can that person benefit? Obviously they can, obviously they do. And so the final point I want to make is keeping up appearances. Now, anyone who has all of these traits, someone who's glamorous and used to a glamorous lifestyle, someone who's entitled and used to living in an entitled way, someone who's ambitious, someone who's invested, someone who is living like a larger than life in this larger than you can imagine mega house. It's probably, and all her friends are like, wow, you having such a fairy tale life. And, you know, I'm putting this picture on Facebook and this is me in room number 17, blah, blah, blah. And you've just done that. You've just wowed your network with how wonderful your life is. You're probably going to want to keep up those appearances. It's nice being told, wow, I wish I had your life. It's nice being envied and admired, and it's nice being able to look down on everyone else and say, hey, I think my life's better than yours. I'm living in a better house than you are, in a better neighborhood than you are, and whatever. Well, that's the one side of the thing. The other side is, well, you've got to now keep that up. Are you also going to put on Facebook, oh, I've been kicked out of my house. Oh, I've lost the house. Oh, I've also lost my job. Are you going to put that on Facebook? Status update. Lost my job, lost my house, loser of the month. Are you going to be putting that up? Probably you're not going to want to put that up. And so you may think someone else wanting to keep up appearances isn't a big deal. But think about yourself and how keeping up appearances can sometimes matter to you. And that's why I've often said, if I'm in a relationship with someone, talking about me personally, I don't like to tell social media about it because I don't want to have to explain to social media why I'm either not in a relationship anymore or why the relationship's not going so well anymore or any of that. In other words, it takes the pressure of keeping up appearances off. Maybe you break up one day and you absolutely meant it. Well, you can get back together the next day. Maybe you had a change of heart. But now you don't have to explain it to social media. And why does it even matter? Like, what you shouldn't be doing things for social media's benefit. You should be doing the thing that's right for you, especially in terms of romantic things. And we do know that she's a show woman. She's someone who's literally in marketing. She's on ESPN. She was to some extent like Shanann Watts. I want everyone to know that I'm having a baby. Let's have a gender reveal. Let's kind of make a big thing about every event. And are you going to want to deal with a situation where you lose your entire lifestyle, not just your house? You can't go skiing anymore. You've got to give the horses back. You've got to take your daughter out of the school that she's in and put her into another school. And so you know you can't keep up those appearances. And you might laugh and you might say, I don't think keeping up appearances is the most important thing. It actually might be. It sometimes can be the most important thing to some people. It really can be sometimes the most important motivator for some people. And it's especially important if you're a showy person. And Michelle was a show woman, a ESPN personality. But bear in mind that keeping up appearances is often fundamentally dishonest. It's basically always saying how wonderful your life is. And the longer you do that, so the longer you have something negative going on in your life, or there's neglect in a certain area of your life, or there's something dysfunctional in your life, on the one hand, and on the other hand, you're keeping up appearances, well, they're kind of self-reinforcing. You're going to try harder and harder to keep up appearances, which is dishonest. You're saying how wonderful your life is, but it's actually not that wonderful. How much you've got to hide away these things that are not wonderful about it, right? And so it becomes self-reinforcing. And to the extent that you become accustomed to lying about your life, my life is so wonderful. Actually, you might be kicked out of your home any moment. There's this horrible divorce battle that's going on. You're about to lose everything. I don't think things are that wonderful. But the extent to which you aren't honest about that is the extent to which you are literally living a lie. And if you are living a lie, it's not such a big jump to lying about an affair and then lying about a murder. You know, it's living a lie then becomes just a natural progression to another level. Does that make sense? So if you add all of these things together, you know, if you started off saying, I can't really think why Michelle Troconis is even on trial for this. You know, she's not even in her DNA, her blood. She's not even at the crime scene. I can't even think what she's got to do with this. Well, the answer is it's not overt. It's not explicit. It's not like she's there at his side going through the crime scene and it's absolutely obvious. It's something that's far more subtle. It is a little bit like Laurie Vallow and Chad Daybell. What was their belief system? What was their lifestyle? What was their attitude to money? A lot of these are invisible things that determine one's actions. And so it's kind of this subtle aspect that is at issue. And one of the ways to uncover the subtleties, possibly text messages that may say things like, I'll do anything for you, or I've never loved anyone as much as I've loved you, or whatever. I don't know if text messages like that exist, but that's something that is coming from the inside and is there. And I don't know whether law enforcement have Michelle Troconis' social media. I would imagine someone who's as show-womany as she is should have social media. Do they have a narrative of that? I'd be interested to know. What was she saying at the time when Jennifer DULOS disappeared? What was she saying? What was she saying in the days and weeks before that happened? Does that make sense? So do you feel like I've made at least a reasonable case for a potential motive? Thanks a lot, Catherine. Interesting surname. It is exhausting trying to keep up appearances. I must say, younger people are very caught up in it. Their appearances are very much tied to their identities, and appearance does matter a lot when you're a young person. I think the older you get, the less people really care about appearances, because you also realize to what extent you've been misled by someone else doing that. Little Black Chook says, I heard all the BS from my ex till I ran out of dosh. Okay. Sounds good. AS2 says, this is all making sense. I mean, I always ask, does that make sense? That's the best answer to that question. If it is, of course. Erica wants to know what was wrong with the comment. I'm not quite sure. Was there something wrong with the comment? Stephanie says, happiest of birthdays to you. Thanks a lot. Barbie, I think, wants some attention. She says, I disagree. Appearances are important at any age. So if you are, let's say, 110 years old and your life is drinking a cup of tea and just like a calm life, do you still want to keep up appearances? Do you need to put a selfie up on Facebook? Is that quite important? Also, if you are, let's say you're a baby, you're 6 months old. Sorry, I'm in a funny mood. Yeah, and I mean, that is perhaps the best aspect of all. If she really did love him, then that can explain everything. That she's caught up, just like Chris Watts. She's so caught up in her feelings that she's almost like a person that's intoxicated, that'll do anything. So that could be part of it. And you guys are aware of 50 Shades of Grey. I don't think I'm overstating it to say, if you're in a relationship with someone who's living this Gatsby-like life, it's probably going to be more romantic than if their home is kind of a cave next to a beach with basically a mattress and a candle. The one is definitely a bit more romantic than the other. Okay. I think that's about it from me. I don't really have much more to say. I am in a bit of a funny mood. I'm not quite sure why. Barbie says, I do bikini bodybuilding. Yeah, but then that is all about appearances. That's a little bit different. I mean, if let's say you're an FBI agent, is your life all about appearances? That let's say you are Graham Coder. Do you think he puts selfies of himself wherever he is all the time? Do you think any any law enforcement person does that. So it's not the same for everybody. No, it's not Red Bull. I haven't had any Red Bull. Yeah, so for those of you who don't know, it's the 19th of January where I am. I'm not sure if it is yet where you are. I turned 52 years today, and I'm probably going to be going out with a friend for breakfast, probably take my dog for a walk in the next, as soon as I get off here, watch the sun come up. I must say, I'm quite conscious of my 50s ticking by 1 year at a time, and I'm thinking of having a very special year this year. I've got some ideas, but I first need to make sure that I'm healthy, and I don't want to overextend myself like I did a couple of months ago. So I need to first get back on the horse and then take the next step. So we'll see. But I would really love to go to the Himalayas this year, and also go to America again, and maybe spend a bit more time in America, maybe 3-4 months, we'll see. So Matt says, are you drinking that filtered water? This is rain filtered water. And yes, I am giving it to Timmy. Thanks so much. Thanks for that. Nice doggy in your picture as well. Thanks, AM. Are you 52 right now as well? That's cool. Are you also kind of aware of at the end of your 50s, you're 60? I kind of feel like once you're through your 50s, I don't know, maybe you feel differently when you're 60, that 60 is not so bad or something like that. Well, that's a nice compliment. Thanks. Thanks for the birthday wishes. Someone here said they're 54. Wow, Barbara says, I'm 70 and I feel 35. Okay. We've got a couple of 50-year-olds here, 52, 55. Someone says, go to Canada. I can't tolerate the cold, although I do feel like I need to go to Canada at some point. Thanks so much, Suzanne. Thank you. Nice profile picture. Matt Prince is 52 last October. So I'm 3 months younger than you, Matt, almost the same age. No wonder we're on the same wavelength. Maybe I must try and get on a plane to America, and then I'll still be 51. Kimchi is 56. Terry says, I'll be 50 in March. Also my brother's birthday in March. Catherine says, it's not cold in summer in Canada, except that your summers are only like, is it a month long or something? Lisa, are you in Connecticut? I'm not quite sure if I'm going to be seeing my family tomorrow. More than likely, they think we're going to have a dinner together, but I'm probably not going to be available for that. So I might see my family for lunch or lunch the day after my birthday. We'll see. I think my father might want to go to a nursery, but to be honest, I'm not sure if I'm in the mood for that. I'll see how I feel. You have a very calming vibe. I've heard quite a few people say that. Mom is 55. Anyone else in their 50s here? Anyone want to give advice for what to do with your 50s who's 60 or 70 or something like that? Thanks a lot, Plant Lady. I must say, I quite like your avatar. I'm like Plant Man. Got an apple tree growing outside. It's really doing well. Apple trees don't necessarily grow that well where I am, and it seems to be doing quite well. Thanks, Plant Lady. I'm not Aquarius. I'm actually Capricorn. I'm on the cusp of both. What time was I born? I need to ask my father that, but I seem to think it was 2 o'clock in the morning or something. And right now it's about 5 o'clock in the morning. So at the moment I'm 52 years old and about 3 hours. Is there anyone here interested in numerology? Now, for someone who's very scientific, I don't really believe in that stuff, but what's quite interesting is if you add all the days of my birthday together, it adds up to, can you believe it, 1, 1, 1. It's kind of, someone in the Netherlands did a thing for me, and it was kind of interesting. If you add, so this is how it works. If you take the fact that I was born on the 19th, and you've got to add those numbers together, so it's 9 plus 1 is 10, and the 1 of the and the 0 together ends up being a 1, right? So there's the 1. Then you take the next number, and it's 01. If you add the 1 to the 0, it's 1. So now you've got 1, 1. And if you add the numbers of my birth year together, it also ends up 1, and it ends up being 1, 1, 1. What does that really mean? Let's have a look. Does anyone believe this? What does 111 mean? Okay, this is very unscientific. This is definitely not something I recommend you put too much interest in. 111 signifies that things in your life are coming into divine alignment. So I would imagine that 111, if that's your life, actually, I think this is slightly different. What does 111 birthday mean? 111 birth date. I really don't know if I want to be reading this stuff to you guys. It's really angel number. What does 111 birth date mean, numerology? Does anyone know? I seem to remember them saying this to me when I was in the Netherlands. They said, if you've got a 111 birth date, you're a very confident person. You motivated through your own strength and decision making. So that's what I was told. I guess it's true. Sometimes it's not. I'm not always completely confident within myself. Yeah, so from what I remember, 111 just means a very assertive person. Beck says, isn't it inquisitive? Let's see if there's a better definition than that one. 111 birth date. So over here it says creative self-expression and self-determination. Anyway, I can't actually believe I'm sharing this with you, but it just for me was quite interesting when someone did it the first time. I was like, wow, I'm 111. Okay. I quite like the sound of that. Whether it means something else is another matter. Okay, I think we're going to end off at 2 hours, October 5th. Thanks a lot, Chelsea. Yeah, no, I appreciate that because I don't really think in that way. Sally says my dad was 112. Thanks, Susan. Is there anyone here who's got advice for anyone who's in their 50s? Anyone who had a good 50s? Perhaps you 59 or 60. Any advice for how to live your 50s? Oh, that's interesting. Very confident. Okay. Okay, but the question is at the end of your 50s. So how should you live your 50s from someone who's already done it? Mel says, don't sweat the small stuff. Mel, how old are you? Stephanie says, do what makes you happy. 50 is the new 35. Okay. Stay fit and watch your diet. That I think is really good advice. I need to work on both of those. Thanks a lot, Jody C. Health is wealth, travel. Yeah, that's potentially true, isn't it? I hope you're right. I hope you're right. Purpose is happiness. Another version of that is happiness is something to do. I've always believed that as well. Irene says, I started a new business in my 50s. How is that business going now? I'm not going to be writing a book. That's one major change that is not going to change for a number of years. I don't need to write a book. I don't want to write a book. There's a tiny part of me that does, but I probably won't be writing a book, hopefully until I'm 70. Gina says, find peace in small things, but still honor big goals. Robin Cortez says, I'm in my 50s, listen to happy music. If you listen to music from your youth, it'll make you feel younger. Okay, so I wanna leave you guys on a happy note. There's a really cool creator from South Africa called The Kiffness. And he puts out, he's on YouTube. You can search him out. And he puts out videos where he hears music from dogs, cats, ducks, little kids, and then he turns that into something quite special. And it really is a great mood lifter. It's very catchy. It's surprisingly addictive to listen to. He really is funny and he really is talented. So make sure you go and check that out after this. The Kiffness on YouTube is also on Instagram. Mel Stiller says, don't give up on your dreams. I must say, I think I've have kind of given up on a couple of dreams. Thanks a lot, Deborah. Thank you. That could be a recipe for happiness. Stop dating and you'll find happiness. So maybe that's the way to go. Okay. Yeah, I have mentioned that mountains calling. So I hope to be in some high mountains this year. Let's call Timmy in. Timmy, do you want to go for a walk? The sun's coming up here in 20 minutes, so I should be in time to catch the sunrise on my birthday. Come, boy. Come. You must come and say goodbye. Hey, come. Come, boy. Oh. Okay, so this is Timmy, for those who don't know. And Timmy is about to go for a walk as well. Do you want to go for a walk? No, no. Go for a walk. You see how dogs think with their noses? You tell them something and then they sniff. Do you want to go for a walk? You go for a walk. See how his nose just moves like that? Go for a walk. Okay. Thanks a lot for being here, guys. Thanks for the super chats. I'm going to be putting some photos later today, my time. It'll be tomorrow, your time. In the community section, just some photos I took in Roswell with some rockets, just some fun photos. And then a friend of mine bakes cakes in like a very unique designs. Like she puts a lot of effort into it's like almost cakes, the cosplay version of cakes. So I've asked her to do a TCRS birthday cake, and unfortunately I asked her a little bit late, but it should perhaps be ready by this weekend, so a couple of days. So look out for that. I wish I could share the cake with you, but I'll share it with you in spirit. Pauline says, I love Timmy. Timmy, someone loves you. Timmy. Okay. Thanks a lot, guys. I'm going to be signing off with the outro. Take care, and I'll see you guys next time. Ciao.